All right, Drew, how's it going, man? How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good, good. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. Ultimately, like we were speaking just a little bit there before, this is the, I think, 22nd or third video in a set of videos where the goal is to figure out what's the difference, right? Between maybe those who make it in the highest level of the game or high level amateurs, sort of all those things, what those differing factors are. So ultimately, my goal is to sit down with great minds like yourself and say, okay, what are the difference? Obviously, for those that don't know you or maybe don't follow you on social media, I'm sure they've seen some of your viral reels where you're just hitting absolute bombs. You know, Drew, maybe if you want to give a little bit of a background on yourself, kind of who you are, what your background is, and then your connection with the space.
Yeah, I mean, if we go way back, I came to golf late, so I started golf like when I was entering high school, 13ish.
Me too. Yeah.
Ended up playing at Torrey Pines High School, which is at the time I didn't realize we were like one of the best golf teams in the nation probably. I think when I was there, we won state championships 3 times. I was always like the guy who was like just off the playing team. So I was always the best non-starter. And I didn't realize how good we were. I was frustrated with myself for not getting better. I was tired of hearing like, your swing's so good, why don't you shoot better scores? So come state championship senior year, I walked off the course mid-round and quit golf for like 11 years. Didn't touch a golf club. So during that time, I got an undergrad in kinesiology, opened a gym, started training athletes, got a master's in sports science, started working for a force plate company. That force plate company functioned like across all major sports. So I've spent spring training camps with almost every Major League Baseball team you can name. I've done rookie mini camps with NFL teams. I've spent time at Olympic training centers. I've presented and done stuff at Quantico, so for military, Navy SEALs. And so like my background is essentially preparing people for sport or for activities that require you to, run faster, jump higher, that type of thing. That all kind of changed. I was living in San Diego. Then we moved up here to Napa Valley. When I got here, I was set on opening a gym and kind of continuing on and doing all that. But the population up here is a little tricky compared to San Diego. So like I was specializing in youth athletics that were sort of moving onward in their competitive careers. So like my passion was like high school kids trying to get to college. And then the length of time I was in San Diego, those college kids ended up, trying to get drafted. So I had a guy drafted 7th overall in the NFL draft. We had unsigned or undrafted signees to teams. Lacrosse was a big sport, so big national teams. But then that all essentially, we moved up here and I worked for that force plate company. And during COVID, we had twins. And I was sort of like, not running on empty, but I was getting tired of I was basically a salesman for force plates. It started out as a very small company where we were like educators and like researchers, but then it moved into, we got bought, and then it became like, hey, like you're out there selling plates. And I just kind of ran into this isn't for me. And so during COVID, Dana Dahlquist ran a COVID special on his certification. And so I would sit up at nights with my twins, who were, at the time, they were like 3, 4, 5 weeks old. And I would sit up at night. My wife did the day shift, I did the night shift, and I would go through Dana's certification. And I would just basically read and do anything golf I could. And then I got to meet Dana, did some in-person stuff. That's how the long drive stuff started. Or not even long drive. For me, it was just speed. I just was like interested in how you make a golf club move faster. Kind of goes in line with everything I've done in terms of guys want to sprint faster, jump higher. It's the same philosophy. You've got force outputs, so you can either produce more force or produce force faster, or produce that force for a longer duration of time. Like that's really all we're after. And then efficiency, if you want to call it that mechanically. So it like fit right within my enjoyment area of what I like. And so I ended up chasing some speed, learning from Dana. And then the way like my page started growing, like you said, there's some reels, but then I was like sharing kind of like what I did in the gym, why I did it, and how it related to the club head speed stuff. So I was testing on force plates. I was testing on launch monitors. We were doing weightlifting stuff. We had bar velocity tracked. So that was fun. So like that's kind of how I ended up where I am. So now I coach golf way more than I ever thought. I actually struggled with that because I didn't want to quit playing amateur golf. think that's been like the saddest thing for me is that I love playing amateur events. I've played 3 times in the last 7 or 8 months. So like to go play a professional event it's a silly idea. And I don't want to. I just want to play a local amateur thing and have fun. So that was why I didn't coach for like a couple years when I started this. And now it's kind of like I don't play enough golf at all, so I might as well just jump in head first. So that's where we're at, coaching, work with Swing Catalyst, and do my NXTGEAR Golf, which is online fitness training, nutrition, and then golf instruction. So my business partners, in all of my time traveling around doing this force plate stuff with the past company, he was the only person who I'd go back to with questions on like, why are you implementing these things with these athletes? So he was a collegiate strength and conditioning coach. So he would have, female sprinters, male high jumpers, men's basketball, women's volleyball. He kind of had this big spread of athletes, and he would test things with all of them, and he'd get a bunch of feedback. And he wrote a paper on some force plate testing they did. He's the guy that like I went to, and so now we've partnered. He's a registered dietitian along with a master's in exercise phys. He's just a great guy. So that's what we do. We coach people. We essentially help people get either in shape or in shape and swinging clubs. It's kind of what we do.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. That's a really good background. So I would say, ultimately, I think people listening to this are probably going to want to get into the weeds a little bit. So I like to get into the weeds a little bit with you. If you were to, let's say, periodize someone like who's going, all right, I want to go on a speed training journey. How would you basically set them up kind of over a year? Are you going to be trying to build a basic strength baseline first and then focusing on either power or speed? Or, do you have like baseline numbers that you're like, all right, you need to be able to deadlift your body weight. You need to be able to deadlift like 3 times your body weight and whatever else. Like, do you have those numbers where it's like, all right, you need to squat twice your body weight and we're not doing anything else until you get there? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's a good question, but it's a very like a frustrating answer because it's very fluid. So like depending on the person would very much impact the training program. So me and you aren't the same person. Like I have a big background in competitive powerlifting. I have a pretty large base of strength for an average person. Again, if you go to like a powerlifting competition or
sure.
I'm weak, but like for a golfer, I'm a fairly strong guy. I'm tall and I've got like a big working capacity for weight training. It's what I did for basically a decade for fun. So my programming is going to look fairly different than if like all of a sudden my wife wanted to jump in and start swinging a club faster. Like, so to answer your question, in general, you're going to start with like capacity driven work. So higher volumes, lower intensities, regardless of who it is. Now, I say that the only caveat is if you've been doing speed work and weight room work, this might be a little different for you, extensively. Like you've done speed work, you've done power work, you've never missed a day of training in, years. We're not going to start at ground zero. So, but the premise still holds. You're gonna do lighter intensities. So like we call them capacity swings. It's like starting at like 2 sets of continuous swings with a heavy stick for 80% effort, 85% effort. You're just kind of moving the stick. And essentially what you're doing is you're trying to adapt the tendons, the muscles of the elbows, wrists, hands, shoulders, things that get hurt if you just jump into like going crazy with a speed stick. And then that sits really nicely with like single limb exercises, high repetition squats. And you wouldn't expect to be fast during this time. You'd expect to be sort of slower. You'd expect to be a bit sore, a bit tired. So it's a tough thing for people to get a hold of. Now, then you'd progress to like more strength-based work. We're going to go, we're going to take those high repetition sets and we're going to start adding some intensity to them. We're going to drop the repetitions a bit and we're going to move along this spectrum from high volume, low intensity to high intensity, low volume, kind of from slow to fast. Again, it's like a spectrum. And along the way, you're going to dose in little bits of the ends of the spectrum. So like if we're way over here doing our prep work, We might have one day where we do a little bit of speed work, just to like see it. Then as we get a little into our strength work, you might see a little like power work, like some low level jumps. And you might have like still some high volume single limb, high volume, rotator cuff, elbow, wrist work for a golfer. But those things become much less, and the focus is sort of like this meat and potatoes. And then same thing, you go up to this speed power world, you're still going to have some semblance of the other stuff, but really the emphasis is high velocity swings. Squatting gets replaced with jumping, loaded jumping. Deadlifts might get replaced with throwing, med ball throws.
Interesting.
Cleans. Like it's just kind of like this,
Sure.
like blending across the force velocity spectrum and then the specificity. So you might move from like very few swings per week to like quite a bit, because the goal is to swing the club faster. You need to shift from general to specific to get things to transfer in. But that's, generally.
Do you prefer unilateral work? Like, obviously, this is like we're painting broad strokes here, right? But like, do you prefer unilateral work generally to standard, or is it kind of just fitting it into systems? Because like, the strength coach I work with that works with professional hockey players and baseball and stuff, like we do so much sprinting and we do a ton of unilateral work, which I've actually noticed, like I feel a lot more stable. But I don't know if you do a lot of unilateral work, or if it's more so like, all right, we're a little more traditional and then we change. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, no, like I would say like we probably have a bias towards like the one or two exercises a session being bilateral. But then like if you looked at like the majority of the work people are doing, it's unilateral.
Yeah, okay.
But there's some data that would say that the bilateral stuff, from a sheer like CNS recruitment power output, there's some good stuff going on in bilateral work. But to like argue with myself, we have a lot of guys who aren't prepared to squat with a bar on their back or whatever. So if you said in general, I would say we do more unilateral than we do bilateral. But once you're able, that stuff comes in for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Whenever you have a player whenever you have a player trying to figure out, let's say you have, a relatively, you have a professional or a high-level amateur or whatever, and they're trying to figure out their ideal playing weight and nutrition and what that looks like. Is there some sort of a science that goes into like, okay, you're going to be fastest at XYZ weight, or, is it kind of a bell curve? Obviously different bone lengths and masses and anything, but is there any sort of a science or anything to it to help people kind of maybe figure out what their ideal kind of playing weight is?
Yeah, I mean, finding ideal weights is difficult, but really like you want to be unobstructed. So like you want to be lean enough to not have to move around yourself. In anything where like arms have to move across body, I don't want a chest and a giant bicep. They're not going to do that much for me, except get in my way. So like in a perfect world, you'd be pretty darn lean. You'd hold all of your muscle mass sort of near the core in the legs. So like in a perfect world, I would be strong, but my forearm would be rail thin. Like it would not be muscular. I would not be doing like bodybuilding work to get my forearms big, because the more mass distal to like the engine, the shoulder girdle, the rib cage, the more momentum I've got to make to get this thing to move. So it's
really, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's the same thing if you look at sprinters. If you look at really fast 100-meter sprinters, they all have no calves. They got big glutes, big hamstrings, big quads. So the closer you get to their hips, they get very muscular. And then by like way of selection, like natural selection, they've got long tendons, little calves, very light lower legs. So it's there's a lot of stuff around task-specific hypertrophy. So like what you're going to do, you want to strengthen the things that engine those movements. So like, you don't want wasted mass. You don't want size on you if you don't have to have it. But yeah, okay. To your question about playing weights, it's tough. You want to be like, 15% body fat for a male, 20-ish for a female. You don't want to be hyper lean, because you start running low on energy. You start running, your hormones run into issues. But carrying excess fat does you no good. It just kind of wears on you. But it's a huge range. it's not a perfect thing. I'd rather see you eat really well, high nutrient dense foods, high protein, healthy fats, low sugars. The general advice, like if you can grow it in the ground, or if it had a mom, it's probably good to eat. Anything else, like it's fine. Like you can go get whatever, but you just want to do the bulk of your work in this sort of natural world, whole foods. And then, yeah, keep a relatively normal body weight.
Yeah,
You don't want
no,
to be on an extreme.
I think that's great. That's super interesting though about the getting the mass outside. That's one thing I'd never thought of because to be honest, I have generally relatively thin forearms, and I've been trying to make them larger just from like an injury prevention strength sort of
Yeah, yeah.
perspective. Where I'm like, oh, if I have stronger forearms, like I'm more than likely, less injury prone kind of deal.
Well, yeah, but that's a great point. Stronger is fine, but like
Yeah,
we don't want you sitting
bigger.
there like bodybuilding for the purpose of getting like a larger circumference forearm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so interesting. That's so interesting. Okay, so let's backpedal real quick. You had mentioned Dana Dahlquist and working with him. Maybe talk a little bit about either what you have maybe either kind of learned from him or if there's sort of general philosophy points. I know some guys out there have like a method, like this is the method. Some guys, like I spoke with Claude Harmon, like you could not be further from a method. So is Dana a method guy? Are you a method guy? And if so, what is that method, or maybe kind of general philosophy? Obviously, it's broad strokes, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. It's I mean, first working with Dana is phenomenal. Like, not to be like the cliche, like he's been as nice as of a guy he may come across on camera, he's better in person. He just wants to see golf and like golf instructors do well. So I think he's been phenomenal to know, and hugely impactful, both like on my own golf game and now like professionally getting into coaching. Going down that route, he's nothing but helpful. So like he's been phenomenal. I don't want to speak for him, but if I were to say a method or not, I would say there's no method, but I think when he looks at a golf swing, he sees like a model, like what he finds optimal. And then he has like, okay, well, if it's not my optimal, then I have like a fade pattern and a draw pattern. And then if it's not one of those, then you start breaking out into pieces. So there's like, there's things that steepen the club, there's things that shallow the club. Chris Mason, I think, says it well. He says there's steeps and shallows. Like there's pieces that go steep, pieces that go shallow. And so those fit into draw and fade patterns. And then you kind of work your way from there. The biggest thing I've learned from Dana that's been like changed the way I look at golf swings is like start from the pelvis, then look at the rib cage and thorax, the spine. Once you look at those things, if you can get those things set up and you get your pressure working well, the arms and hands and like the club seem to fall in place more often than not, especially for good golfers. But if you start working sort of like outside in and you don't address these huge chunks of body that sort of like, if I bend forward, it's really hard to change what my arm does. I only have so much range of motion. I can't just tell it to go somewhere. But if I get my tilt to my bends and my pelvis to turn, the rest of the stuff kind of just falls in place oftentimes. So that's probably the biggest thing is like looking at the golf swing now, I look like straight at the pelvis and then I look right at the like rib cage spine. If I see that doing something, tilting, bending in a way it shouldn't, or ideally wouldn't, we go at that first. So if you came into me and you're like, I want to hit draws with my short irons, and you go into a pelvis sway left bend, it's like gonna have a hard time drawing it from there. Like it's gonna be difficult. So we're gonna get you, a slight bit of right bend, a little bit of rotation to get hand depth. We're not gonna talk about hand depth. We're just gonna do it by the other stuff. So that's where Dana has been the most impactful for me in a general swing sense. For me personally, like with my golf swing, seeing that like I've done very little with him around playing better golf. Like if I've taken 50 lessons, I've done 45 of them for speed. Like that's just what we did because I was interested. So from the speed perspective, I wanted to do it from like I wanted to be able to play golf with a ton of speed. That was my challenge. Like I didn't want to just go ham and like have a big long swing and, lose sight of the golf ball. So like that was all about pressure and momentum and like how fast can we move our pressure to our trail side break it, wind up, and like have structure. So I don't want to just go all over the place and then slam pressure back to the lead side. That dynamic action of just like slamming your body or your pressure around was, yeah, massively impactful, because I was always very calm. I was always like very slow to do things, and he was like, no, it's like you got to like throw it over there as fast as you can if you want to go faster. And so that appreciation for pressure bouncing was the most impactful to me, years ago.
How difficult was it for you? Were you someone who breaks pretty well and shifts well early? Like, any of the force play stuff, like at this point, like I've not given up on it, but like I'm a low mid 170s ball speed guy. Like whenever I try and get all over the place, I lose my arm structure, I lose stuff. So at least for right now, I'm not touching it. But one of the big issues that I like had a hard time doing was breaking early enough and getting pressure into the ground early enough. Like it's always like so late. Was that hard for you, or were you a guy who got pressure into the ground early enough to begin with?
Well, so it's kind of a weird answer. Like I'm a person who, when I was a junior, I was sliding all over the place. I was swaying and sliding and like all over. So like I naturally want to move. I'll never forget sitting in my backyard and having my dad go like, the golf swing is a baseball swing. Just like load up on the right side, get your arms back, and then pick your lead foot up, step and swing. And I was like, okay, like that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So like I was bad at doing things in the right timing, because I would go to the right too much and I'd stay there for too long. And then I would like downswing shift at the same time. So into my right foot, I was phenomenal. I would get into my right side and hang over there really, really well. Felt really comfortable, but then I was too slow to get to my lead side. So that's where like almost all of my drills became, how do I get myself to stop hanging back? And how do I get myself to almost feel like the midsection for me is coordinated in getting into my left side, instead of the pelvis racing and the head hanging back, trying to hit high draws. So yes, I was good at shifting, and then no, I needed to learn some things, which I've gotten much, much better at. So like when I met Dana, I peaked verticals and lead side braking forces basically at impact. Like that's when all that stuff would happen. When I'm going my fastest now, I peak that stuff like before lead arm parallel to the ground. So before P5.
That's early.
Yeah, and that's when you're swinging 148-ish miles an hour.
Yeah, no, that's super early. I think some of mine peaks were like after impact. It's like that's just so late. And it's one of those things with force plates, but I find it pretty interesting. So with your work with NXTGEAR Golf, I mean, one of the big things here is to try and figure out how to play the game better, right? Like speed is a big part of it. How much of it is getting people to move their bodies well? How much of it is getting people to actually play the game better? Is it pretty much mainly a focus on how the body moves, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like we get guys so we have a couple pros right now who have their mental person, their swing coach, and all they come for us is training and nutrition. We have other people who come in who want it all, who they just want us to be their coaches. So it really depends on who the person is. The professionals usually have a team that's local to them. So like they want to see people, but they want help with programming. Ideally, we do more than we don't. The more control you have over like the whole orchestra of instruments, the better the music. If you're controlling one section and I'm controlling another and another person, it gets really difficult to mesh all that together. And the way we look at this stuff is like, if you, just like any other sport. So like if you go get mad at yourself because you played a round of golf that was poor, and you go hit balls for 5 hours, you chip for 3, and you putt for an hour, and you're just out there all day working, and then you've got a training session scheduled the next day that's a high intensity speed day, and you just try and go hammer it, and you're like, oh, I was slow and my back hurts, and we'd look at you and be like, well, yeah, you just added all sorts of training stress over here, and you thought it would have no impact on the gym work. And it's like, that's insanity. Same thing happens in the NFL when guys don't play good defense. The coaches run them. the strength and conditioning coaches get them and they go like, what is going on here? With team sports now though, those S&C guys will look at the GPS data from the players because they all wear Catapult, they all wear some form of GPS, and they can look and they can go like, oh, your training load spiked considerably. Like there's a huge spike that we never see. So we're going to tailor back our strength work today. This is like, there's an old paper by Tim Gabbett that got kind of trashed, but the general concept is an acute chronic workload. So you have this acute spikes in workload versus like chronically achieving higher levels of work over time. That those sudden spikes are the things that tend to cause injuries or problems for people. So you don't want to just cruise along, spike something and then go back and then spike it again. That's when stuff goes bad. So our philosophy is like, you want to slowly build the person across time. Like, we don't want you to come into us and go like, hey, I want to increase my swing speed 10 miles an hour next week. It's like, well, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds tomorrow, but like, it's not smart.
Right.
So.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, our approach is very holistic and it's very like slow cooking because it's I've made that quote a couple times on Instagram, is that your best ability is availability. So the healthier you are, the less injured you are, the better off you are. It's a lot better than, pushing.
I think it's really interesting because you're from the same background as, so I had Brett Kelly on who, he runs the Exo Center here in town, but he's worked with like the Olympic ski team and he's worked with, a lot of baseball systems. Like he's been all over, right? And he brought up the same point of overall workload in terms of like, that was how he used to manage the skiers in terms of like overall workload. And they'd have to take into consideration even things like, when they would have to get out of the foam pit and like go back up top and walk with the skis and like all of those things making a difference. And we related it back to speed training in terms of like, being intelligent with the overall workload. And actually, I know Whoop maybe isn't the most ideal thing for this, but made me start wearing my Whoop because I was like, all right, let me like actually start paying attention to my overall strain and overall workload. And I realized like 9 times out of 10, I'm overreaching and I didn't even feel like I'm doing anything.
Yeah, right.
Like to me, it doesn't feel like I'm doing a whole lot. And it's like, no, you're still overreaching. So it's been really interesting for me to think of it through that lens. And then the fact that you also brought it up is just incredibly intriguing.
Yeah, well, 2 funny things. So my partner, Landon, your guy, Brett, you said? He probably knows Landon Evans' name. Landon was just at Arizona Exos to do some work with them. So they probably run into each other. Number 2, like to your point, it's not just the physical stuff. Like the overall workload is like your mental stress, your hydration levels, your nutrition, your sleep. Like if you eat like junk and you don't drink, like you don't stay hydrated, that has a drain or a stress on you that you basically have to recover from. I say in air quotes, but all of that stuff, it all blends together. And it's why like one of Landon's big things is like our goal with our guys is pennies in the bank. Every day, you're just like every meal, every sleep, you're just putting pennies in the bank so that like come time for, I don't know, a cross-country trip, a trip across like 10 time zones, like whatever it is. You have a baby and you're up all night, like whatever. Once those things happen, you've got this big bank that you've stored of like good behaviors rather than like, hey, dude, I went and hit the gym so hard that like I can't walk today. Like that doesn't do anything for you. It's the repeated work over time that pays dividends way more than anything hard one time.
I think that's really interesting. I guess sort of as we're kind of wrapping up here, I just wanted to get your take on ultimately, the goal was to kind of build a list of, hey, these are like the 5 things. And like I mentioned to you before, it's kind of turned into there are no 5 things. Being as a guy, you are up over 200 mile an hour ball speed. At the professional level, we've kind of said that the benchmark is around 180. Some guys say it's a little bit lower. But what's your take on playing at the highest level? What sort of speed do you feel like moving forward people are going to need? And then are there any other elements in the game of golf that you feel like high-level players do XYZ incredibly well?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the ball speed stuff, it'll be interesting because I think it's very dependent on what the tour decides to do with the way courses are set up. How firm are they going to make them? What's the rough going to be like? Is the rollback happening? Like, The ball speed stuff may all change. Personal opinion is that you want the fastest speed you can get with like really high quality structure. So the structure and the pattern that builds like maximal speed. I'm talking, for me, that's like you're creeping to 215, 218 ball speed, is not the same pattern that I can be on a golf course at 200. That 15 miles an hour of ball speed, I start changing what my arms do, what my wrists do, how far my body moves. So like those patterns are different. I think people need to respect that. If you chase speed, in my opinion, the wrong way for an average golfer or for a competitive golfer, is you're chasing maximal instead of operating. Like people need a really good golf swing that operates at a high level. And that's why the strength and conditioning work, the nutritional stuff, some genetic luck and being big and strong and or lanky or whatever it is, that's where that plays in. So the 180 ball speed, like I actually think that's an interesting debate. Like once you eclipse like 185, that extra speed becomes useless. I think that's going to be true on average, but you will get your Steph Curry. You will get your golfer who comes out at 195, 200 and hits it damn straight. But it won't be the norm. Like the NBA still isn't a bunch of Stephs. Like there's one guy out there launching from wherever when he's hot. So I think that'll happen to golf. People are wild. You get some crazy outliers in all sports, so it will happen. Operating at high speeds, yeah, I think 180 is going to be like, I don't want to say it's a walk in the park, but like it will not be hard for guys to figure out who grow up with all these technologies we have now and all of the stats you have now. It's just like it's a thing you do. So yeah, I think 180 will be a norm. I agree with the people right now who say probably you can go underneath that and be just fine. Because it's still new, like in the scheme of life. Like this ball speed thing is what, 6 years old, 5 years old?
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel like Scott, who came on the first show, is one of the people who are pushing it the hardest.
Scott and Mark Brody were both like,
Mark Brody, yeah,
hit the ball hard and then go from there. But I can't remember when Mark's book came out that every shot counts. It's maybe 10 years old, maybe
13, I think.
13?
2013,
Okay,
2014. Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, anybody who, like, you need to teach your kid about that for that to be like sustained. Like we're all people playing golf now, that was introduced as they were alive. So it's brand new. So that, yeah, I think that's going to be a thing. I think the launch and spin that comes with speed in today's game is more important than the speed itself, meaning that you can hit the ball high and soft with mid long irons and stop balls on these crazy greens. So that goes to my point on the conditional side of things. Like if they keep pushing firmness, then the speed's going to be more important, in my opinion, because you get the speed, you get the height and spin. It's less about the T-ball.
I think you make an interesting point there about chasing speed the wrong way. Legitimately, the reason I've stopped chasing speed and just accepted, like, I'm just going to go to the gym and my ball speed has just slowly crept up over the last little bit here. I lose my arm structure. Like, one of the big things that I try and do is I keep my right elbow in front of my shirt seam. I keep my elbows the same distance apart. Like, that's all I work on with my coach is legitimately that, like, just arm structure. And I find whenever I was trying to chase speed, I just would lose it. Then you start hitting like flip hooks and like all this crazy stuff. And it's like, all right, like let's just accept the fact you're going to be 170 mile an hour ball speed guy right now. But I hit, 70% of my fairways right now if I keep good arm structure. And it's like, That's fine, dude. I think I got so caught up, and I think some people maybe will at home, they'll relate to this. Like I got so caught up in like, all right, 180, 180, 180. And it's like, I'm swinging up here and I'm at like 172, or I can just swing here and be at 170. It's like, just get stronger. Like, just get stronger. Right.
Stronger, more powerful.
Yep.
And let it be what it is. You'll have way better results. You'll hit all your clubs better. Yeah, you can't just go search. It's like, I feel like fitting, like golf club fitting did the same thing. You would fit a driver to get like optimal launch and spin for distance. And now you go to like a good fitter who if you're a good player, it's no longer about like what's optimal distance. It's like what gets me like the best controllable ball that's still pretty darn fast. But I want a forgiving driver. I want a moderate spin driver. I'm not just out here trying to hit 1600 RPM knuckleballs that go forever. But I think we got caught in that trap, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And we're doing the
I
same thing with
definitely did
speed.
as well. Like I made a change last year into what actually isn't even the most efficient, but I switched from a 6X to a 7TX in my driver. And like it brought my dispersion in here, and yeah, I gave up 2 or 3 mile an hour club speed, but like I legitimately was like, give me whatever the heaviest is that goes straight.
Right.
And it was kind of an interesting change because before I was like, all right, let me get the most optimal and let me spin it at 21 and let me, you know what I mean? Whereas now I'm like, let's get it in here. So I think you make a really interesting point of, you know, fitting and swinging and understanding what your goal is. Like you mentioned the 215 and versus the 200 and like what the goal is there, and same with the equipment. So I think that's a very interesting point to sit on.
Yeah, and then like to keep going like down your question of like what's important. The thing I see often, so like I'm lucky I got to spend time at the PGA Tour event up here in Silverado with Tom Johnson. Tom is he was a D1 Northwestern stud, earned his tour card for a year, and then I think he had his family. Now he's coaching, but now he's qualifying for stuff. So he's qualified for the AT&T. He qualified for Silverado, made the cut a few years in a row now, and just qualified for the PGA Championship. So I got to walk with him. And he's always a super interesting guy to talk to because he's a very, very good golfer, like extremely good player. But he's also a great coach. So like he's got this interesting brain when you talk to him. When you watch him coach, he cares about, positions and structure and getting things done well. But when he's playing, when I'm inside the ropes with him, walking in a practice round, I can't tell you there was not a single mention of anything other than like, what's the grass like? What's the air like? How's the ball bouncing? Like what? It's just like pictures and visuals and reading lies. And it was like watching him go from this like teacher to like an artist where he would play the practice round, he'd hit his tee shot, hit it in the fairway, pick it up, go to the rough, and go, like, how would I get the ball to the green from here? Can I? Like, am I going to hit a chopped fairway wood? Am I going to lay it up? Like, how does this rough act? So, like, people need to pay attention to playing golf versus, like, working on your swing. I think the average golfer that we come across in coaching is either, like, type A, hyper analytical, watches 8 million YouTube videos on the swing, and the whole round of golf, they're like, if I just get this position right, I'll hit a good draw or whatever. And you're like, that's not how it works. Like, you could hit this position perfectly and then just absolutely screw it up the rest of the way because you have no sense of anything, no target, no like connection to like the shot shape or the feel at impact. Yeah, so like that ability to disengage from technical thoughts and get into like deeply get into seeing and feeling and like yeah, like watching the shot happen in front of you and then going to hit it. That was cool to watch Tom do that. That was like the amount of time he spent looking at lies and reading lies, and that was eye-opening for me. And just like, feet apart from each other. And he's like, this ball is going to do this. This grass is like this. This has no bottom. This is firm. This is, and the amount of thought and the difference in like how he set up without even really saying anything. He was just kind of like swing the club and you'd see him tilt his shoulders and swing it some more and open his stance, swing it some more. And then he'd kind of like scoot into the ball and hit it. And I'd be like, what were you doing? And he's like, I don't know. I just like, it felt like this, it looked like that. And I felt like I could do this. And I was like, okay, so there's no, like I need to be 10 degrees down with my left shoulder low. And it was just a feel thing. So I think people need to work on that or at least
Yeah.
learn how to do that.
No, I totally agree. I'm actually doing some really interesting work with Aimpoint Golf Performance right now with Gary McShay in Ireland. He and I are working on it's all his brainchild. I'm just like helping him put it together. But basically, we're testing it on me right now. He calls it going to the movies is one of his big things, right?
Yeah.
So like legitimately like viscerally feeling in your body of,
Everything.
hitting the shot before you have it. You can feel it in your hands. You can feel it here. I mean, I just filled out a document yesterday where 5 examples of times that I did this incredibly well, and we're trying to figure out, okay, on long shots, I actually visualize in black and white, and on short game, I actually visualize in color, and I didn't even realize that. And it's like, these are like kind of just these crazy things of like, this is playing the game, and there's obviously a place, for the mechanics side of it, but then there's also the playing it side of things that I was for years like the guy who you mentioned where it's like, I just got to get this position. I just got to get this position. It's like, I have a great golf swing and I can't freaking use it. And it's like, so it's been a really interesting journey and also interesting you bring it up. So
yeah. But the other thing, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, to your point though, the thing I do, so I do this weird game. Like if you ever done the second team All-American, like your second shot's always real good.
Yeah.
So what I do in my practice swings is I feel and I see my usual miss, and like I try and feel what that feels like, and then I like my shot is my second shot. It's like, no, like this is how it feels, and this is how it looks.
That's interesting.
So I go through, and it comes from this like a swing coaching, like motor learning is like feel the wrong so you can feel the right. And so like for me, like I usually have a hard hook that I'll hit, and like I can feel it. And so I'm like, okay, well I want everything to go like this. And then the outcome's usually better, the better I can get at feeling the wrong one and then kind of leaning into the right one. So it's a weird thing I do.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I want to be conscious of your time. I know you are a busy man. I appreciate you gave us 50 minutes here. So a lot of really interesting insight. I think, the golf nerds out there are going to enjoy it. I know I certainly did. Anything you want to add as we're kind of wrapping up here?
No, I had a great time. It's a good talk. I ramble a lot, so thanks for listening.
No, I learned a lot. So I think it was really interesting. So cool. Drew, thanks, man. It's been good to chat with you after seeing you on Instagram for all these years. So
yeah, it was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother.